The last stand of the Balan. The vast emptiness of space echoed with the silent screams of millions. The Balan fleet, once a formidable force, now limped through the void, wounded and broken. The stars, once a beacon of hope and possibility for the Balan people, now seemed distant and indifferent. Murloc, an experienced Balan pilot, lay in his narrow bunk aboard his starship, his thoughts clouded with the memories of what had come before. The war with the Andorians had not only taken his people's cities and colonies, but had stripped them of their will to fight. It had started innocently enough, with a distant skirmish on a mining colony. But the Andorians, cunning and merciless, had no intention of just skirmishing. They had descended upon the Balan with unyielding savagery. Their warships, massive and sleek, tore through Balan defenses with ease, their plasma weapons burning entire cities to the ground. The Andorians were relentless, each day feeling like a death sentence, each battle another attempt at extinguishing the light of Balan civilization. 3 years. 3 years of continuous destruction and retreat. 3 years of watching helplessly as Balan worlds crumbled under the weight of Andorian superiority. Murloc's ship was part of the fleet that had been charged with defending the last of the Balan colonies, but it was clear his people were outmatched. The Andorians had superior ships, superior weapons, and most terrifying of all, a ruthlessness that no Balan could match. The Andorian ships were faster, better armored, and equipped with technology that the Balan could only dream of. It was not a fight of strategy or skill. It was a fight for survival, and the Andorians were winning. Murloc's bunk was cramped, and he could hear the low hum of the ship's engines as it drifted through space. His thoughts were clouded with fatigue, the kind of weariness that only constant battle could bring. His body was sore, bruised from years of combat, but it wasn't the physical pain that gnawed at him. It was the hopelessness, the feeling that they were being hunted, slowly and inexorably, until there would be nothing left but the ashes of their once great species. His ice stalks, long and proud, drooped in resignation. These sensitive organs, which had once helped him navigate his surroundings with grace and ease, now sagged as if they too had given up. The war was going badly, very badly, and Murloc had no illusions about what the future held. If things continued at this rate, the Balan would be extinct within the decade. His wingmate, Cavil, walked into the small, dimly lit compartment, his expression as heavy as Murloc's. Cavil was younger, perhaps a little more idealistic, but even he could feel the weight of their impending doom. He slumped down on the opposite bunk, his eye stalks drooping in defeat. "Another colony lost," Cavil said, his voice flat, the weariness of constant retreat evident in every syllable. His words cut through the silence, a reminder of just how far they had fallen. Murloc nodded, staring at the wall ahead of him, his mind filled with the images of burning cities and the screams of the innocent. The Andorians had been thorough in their attacks. They didn't just destroy military targets. They tore through the very fabric of Balan society. Their cities, once vibrant and full of life, were now nothing more than smoldering ruins. Their birthing pools, sacred to their species, had been shattered. Their larvae, Balan infants, ripped from the wombs of their mothers by the searing heat of Andorian plasma fire. It was genocide in its purest form, and Murloc could do nothing but watch it unfold. "We can't go on like this," Cavil continued, his voice breaking slightly. "We're running out of options. If we retreat again, how many more will die? How much longer can we keep running?" Murloc clenched his mandibles in frustration. He knew the truth of Cavil's words all too well. The Balan leadership had already begun to talk about surrender, but Murloc couldn't bring himself to even consider it. Surrender meant extinction. It meant the end of everything they had worked so hard to build, the end of their culture, their people. But fighting seemed just as hopeless. There was only one thing left to try. It was a last-ditch effort, a desperate hope that some of the leadership had dismissed as insane. But Murloc had heard the rumors, and deep down, he knew there was no other choice. The humans, They had offered their help in the past, warned the Balan about the Andorians' growing power and their plans to wipe out the Balan race. The humans, known across the galaxy for their ferocity and their willingness to fight, had extended an olive branch, only to be met with skepticism and fear from the Balan leadership. The humans were a dangerous species, yes, but they were not without their uses. Their reputation as ruthless fighters was well known, and their war machines were among the most advanced in the galaxy. But to Murloc's people, the idea of accepting help from humans, especially given their violent history, was unthinkable. Psychotic killers, Cavil had called them. Genocidal monsters. The Andorians were bad, but they were nothing compared to the savagery of the humans, or so the Balan believed. Murloc turned to his wingmate, his heart heavy with the weight of the decision he knew had to be made. "I think it's time we called for help," Murloc said quietly, his voice barely above a whisper. The humans were right. They warned us about the Andorians, and now they're the only ones who can help us. If we don't call them in, we're done. Cavil's eye stalks shot up, disbelief flashing in his eyes. "Are you mad? The humans. You want to bring those genocidal killers here now, when we're on the verge of collapse. They'll slit our thoraxes and drink our blood. Murloc, you've seen what they do." Murloc's heart raced as warning klaxons blared throughout the ship. The Andorians had found them again. They were here. Now. Murloc knew there was no time to waste. The fleet was outmatched, but if the humans arrived, there might still be a chance. He turned to Cavil, his eyes filled with the weight of their species' survival. "We have no choice. We'll be extinct if we don't try. It's either the humans or nothing." Cavil didn't respond immediately. He looked at Murloc, then glanced down at the floor, as if weighing the consequences. The klaxons continued to blare. The Andorians were closing in. "Send the signal," Cavil said finally, his voice heavy with acceptance. "But if they do what you fear, it's on you." Murloc nodded. With a shaking hand, he activated the communication relay. It was time to take the final desperate step. "May the humans hear us," Murloc whispered as he sent the distress signal into the void, hoping against hope that they would respond in time. The arrival of the killer humans. The harsh hum of the Balan starship's alarm systems still echoed through the corridors as Murloc paced in the command room. The gravity of his decision weighed heavily on him, the moments of uncertainty stretching far longer than he had anticipated. His mandibles clicked nervously as he looked over at Cavil, who stood silent beside him, his expression a mixture of disbelief and reluctant acceptance. The Andorians had found them again. This time, there was no way out. The fleet's ships were scattered, outgunned, and hopelessly outmatched. The Balan could no longer defend their homes, and the survivors were few. The enemy warships loomed closer on the sensors, massive, imposing, and relentless. Even if they did retreat, what was left to save? Nothing but the shattered remains of their once glorious species. Murloc's eyes darted over to the communication console. The distress signal had gone out. The humans, humanity's brutal, feared warriors, would be their last hope. Yet, he couldn't silence the fear in his chest. Would they arrive in time? Would they come at all? And if they did, what kind of saviors would they be? The humans had been described in every possible way. Cold, merciless, violent. Even in their most charitable accounts, they were a race of war and bloodshed. Was it really worth the gamble? Was there any other choice? Cavil's voice broke through Murloc's troubled thoughts. "They'll come, won't they? The humans, or have you sent us to our doom, Murloc?" The younger Balan's tone was sharp, edged with bitterness and fear. Murloc met his wingmate's gaze, trying to steady the storm of doubt within himself. "I don't know, but if they do come, we can't afford to hesitate. We have to trust that they can save us." A crackle interrupted their conversation, followed by the voice of the ship's communications officer. "Commander Murloc, we've received an incoming signal. It's the humans. They're responding." For a brief moment, Murloc's heart skipped. Could it be? His thoughts were interrupted by the officer's report, growing clearer as it came through the ship's speakers. "This is Captain Rayner of the Human Alliance. We've received your distress signal. We are on our way. Hold tight, Balan. Help is coming." There was a faint silence in the room as the weight of Rayner's words sunk in. The humans, the very race they had feared, were actually coming to their aid. But what kind of help would they offer? Murloc had heard stories, horrific stories, about humanity's methods of war. They didn't just conquer, they obliterated. A simple clash between human forces and their enemies was enough to leave entire civilizations in ruins. If they were coming to help, what would be left of the Andorians when they were finished? Would the humans destroy the invaders, or would they make the Balan part of their blood-soaked warpath too? "We have no choice but to trust them," Murloc muttered under his breath, turning to Cavil. His voice was quiet but resolute. "They're our only shot at survival." Minutes felt like hours as the Balan ship drifted through space, the looming presence of Andorian warships drawing nearer. Murloc's thoughts remained fixed on the coming confrontation, his mind racing through countless scenarios. He knew what the humans were capable of, but he had no idea how they would treat the Balan. The universe saw humanity as a race of killer soldiers, ruthless, unyielding, and hungry for battle. Would they help, or would they come to wipe out the Andorians and everyone in their path? "Hold fast," Murloc muttered to the crew. "They're coming, and we'll see if they keep their word. We will survive, or we will fall with them." The distant hum of engines grew louder as the human fleet finally came into view on the radar. The ships were sleek, metallic behemoths, each with a deadly, menacing aura. The Human Alliance vessels were unlike any Murloc had ever seen, sleek, heavily armored, and bristling with weaponry. Their design was bold, aggressive, built for combat in a way the Balan could never have imagined. The ships, though fewer in number than the Andorians, seemed to exude an aura of cold, calculating precision. On the ship's view screens, Murloc could see the fleet forming up around the Balan vessel. The humans were taking up defensive positions, closing the gap between the two fleets. Murloc could only stare, mesmerized by the sight of the human ships. They looked like harbingers of destruction, but their presence was oddly reassuring. They had come. The Balan fleet's communication officer transmitted an urgent message to the Human Alliance ships. "We've suffered heavy casualties, Captain. We cannot hold out much longer against the Andorians. We're counting on you." A voice crackled through the comm system. Captain Rayner's voice was calm, unwavering. "Understood. We're here now. Get ready, Balan. This is going to be a hell of a fight. We're bringing the fight to them. Do as I say, and you'll live through this." As the human ships began to maneuver into position, the Andorian fleet continued its advance, unknowing of the storm that was about to descend upon them. The Balan watched in awe and fear as the human vessels powered up their weapons, massive cannons bristling from every angle. Murloc's eyes widened as the humans unleashed their fury. Blazing energy beams shot out from the ships, tearing through the Andorian vessels like they were nothing more than paper. Explosions lit up the darkened space as the human weapons found their targets, overwhelming the Andorian ships in an instant. It was brutal. It was swift. It was everything the Balan needed but never thought possible. As the battle raged on, Murloc stood frozen, watching as the Andorians began to retreat, their ships crippled by the human onslaught. The human ships continued to fire, relentless in their pursuit, until the Andorian fleet was in full retreat. The sound of explosions and the flashing of weapons began to subside as the Andorians, realizing they were outclassed, withdrew. But the humans didn't let up. No, they pursued. Murloc realized then what the humans were capable of. They weren't here to simply protect the Balan. They were here to finish the fight. As the final Andorian ships limped away, a silence fell over the battlefield. The Balan had survived, but the cost of survival had only just begun to sink in. Captain Rayner's voice came over the comm once more. "This is Captain Rayner. We've neutralized the Andorian threat. You're welcome, Balan. Murloc stared at the screen, the full weight of the battle still heavy on his mind. The humans had come, and they had crushed their enemies. But they had done so in the most terrifying way possible. The Balan were saved, but at what cost? What would the humans want in return for their help? And more importantly, what would become of the Balan now that they had witnessed the killer humans in action? The war was far from over, but for the first time in years, Murloc could see a glimmer of hope. The price of survival. The aftermath of the battle was overwhelming. The vacuum of space, usually a silent, unforgiving expanse, now echoed with the remnants of destruction. The Andorian fleet, once a symbol of dominance, had been shattered in mere hours, retreating in disarray, leaving behind a wake of twisted, burning metal. The battlefield, now filled with the wreckage of what had once been a force to reckon with, was a stark reminder of the brutal efficiency humanity had brought to bear. Murloc stood on the bridge of his ship, staring out into the blackness of space, watching the glowing wrecks of Andorian vessels drift away. The human ships, though fewer in number, had proven devastatingly effective. They had brought war in a way the Balan had never anticipated. Cold, calculated, and relentless. His thoughts were a whirlwind, caught between awe and fear. The humans had saved them. Yes, but at what cost? They had obliterated the Andorians without hesitation, their ships tearing through the enemy like a predator raking its claws through soft flesh. The Balan had been spared, but their salvation had come at the hands of a race whose methods were terrifyingly efficient. As the ship settled into a temporary calm, Murloc could hear the steady hum of the communications officer. Commander Murloc. The officer's voice crackled through the ship's speakers, pulling Murloc out of his reverie. The human fleet has hailed us. Captain Raynor is requesting to speak with you. Murloc took a deep breath. He had been expecting this. The humans had come to their aid, but they didn't do so out of charity. There would be demands. There would be costs. Put him through, Murloc ordered, his voice steady, but laced with the uncertainty he felt. A moment later, the screen flickered to life, revealing a stern, battle-hardened figure in full combat armor. His face was partially obscured by a helmet, but Murloc could sense the calm confidence that emanated from the human captain. He had been the architect of this destruction, and now he was the one to settle the price for it. Commander Murloc. Captain Raynor's voice was cold, measured, yet oddly respectful. We've eliminated the Andorian threat for now, but don't mistake this victory for a simple favor. Humanity doesn't do charity. Murloc nodded, steeling himself for the inevitable. I understand. What is it that you want in return, Captain Raynor? We're in your debt. Raynor's eyes narrowed, though his tone didn't waver. Debt. A debt doesn't mean much out here in the cold of space. We helped you because it serves our interests. But that doesn't mean you're off the hook. You and your people are on borrowed time, Murloc. The Andorians will regroup, and they'll come back. But next time, you won't be able to rely on the Balan fleet alone. We want a partnership. Murloc felt his heart sink. A partnership with humanity. They didn't offer alliances out of goodwill. They didn't need allies. They needed pawns. He had known this moment was coming. The question was, what price would they demand for their help? Raynor continued, his eyes unwavering. We can offer protection, Murloc. The Andorians won't dare come back if we're standing with you, but it comes at a cost. You'll share your resources, your intelligence, and your technological advancements with us. Your people will join the human alliance as a subordinate race. We won't ask for complete control, just your loyalty and your resources. And when the time comes, we will expect your fleet to fight alongside ours. Do you agree? Murloc's mind raced. The offer was both a lifeline and a shackle. Survival was paramount, but at what cost? His people had already lost so much. They had been pushed to the brink, their very existence hanging by a thread. Could they afford to resist the humans? The answer was clear. They couldn't. But the weight of what this alliance would mean for the future of the Balan was heavy. We don't have a choice, do we? Murloc said quietly, his voice barely above a whisper. Raynor's lips curled into a thin smile. No, you don't. For a moment, Murloc stood silent, the weight of the decision crushing him. The Andorians had nearly wiped them out, and now the humans were offering salvation, at the cost of their autonomy. The Balan could either fight to retain their independence, knowing they would be annihilated in the process, or they could submit to humanity's will, ensuring their survival, but losing everything they had fought for. The choice was stark. Understood, Murloc finally said, his voice steady, though his heart was heavy with the implications of what he had just agreed to. We will accept your offer. But know this, Captain Raynor, this will not be forgotten. Raynor nodded, as if expecting that response. Good. You'll find that humanity doesn't forget its debts either. And remember, Commander Murloc, we're not saving you because we like you. We're saving you because we want your resources, your knowledge, and your strength. Help us, and you might just find that we're better allies than your enemies. The transmission ended abruptly, and the screen went black. Murloc stood there for a long moment, staring at the darkened display. The decision had been made. The Balan were now bound to the humans, for better or worse. Cavil, who had been silent through the exchange, spoke up. What now? Murloc turned to face his wingmate. Now we prepare. The Andorians will return, but when they do, we'll be ready, and we will fight with the humans, whether we like it or not. The words felt heavy on his tongue, like a burden that he could never undo. The Balan were no longer free. They had entered into a new era, one shaped by the ruthless ways of humanity. But at least they would survive. As the Balan fleet began the long process of integrating into the human alliance, they faced a new reality. Their independence had been sacrificed, their pride shattered. The Balan were now vassals of a much stronger force, with the humans as their overlords. The Andorians were still out there, their defeat only temporary. And when the time came, the Balan would stand beside humanity in the next great battle. But in that moment, as Murloc gazed out into the endless black of space, he couldn't shake the feeling that the true cost of survival wasn't just losing their independence, it was something far deeper. The Balan would now fight not for their home, not for their way of life, but for the very future of their people, bound forever to the will of the humans.